broadband connectivity has revolutionized our lives at work and at home. It's something we are used to, most of us, to use every day. However, there are large parts of the world where there is no broadband connectivity. And also, when we go outside the cities, often we don't have access to broadband. And it's limiting us. So it's created a digital divide between urban and rural areas, as well as between developing and developed countries. I'll talk today about 2 Swedish startup companies that are trying to reduce the digital divide and are doing it already today. So let's get back to the situation today in the world. Often we talk about the people in the countryside that don't have broadband, and we don't think about how many they are. But globally, there are about 4 billion people underserved that don't have 10 megabits or more. And only 15% of the Earth's surface is covered with terrestrial networks. This is the reason that when you go outside the big cities, onto the small roads, often there is no broadband available. There is no problem getting broadband in most urban areas around the world. There is 4G or even now 5G. And I had hoped that 5G would have been a generation to provide broadband everywhere. Instead, it has focused a lot on providing more broadband to those that already have enough. But getting outside the big cities, there are about 4 billion people living within terrestrial networks that are underserved. They live in suburban areas or semi-rural areas. Only in the United States or in Europe, there are tens of millions of people that lack good broadband. If we go to Africa, there are hundreds of millions, and in Asia, billions of people lacking good broadband. In the very rural areas, there is no terrestrial networks. You need some other technology to connect directly to a satellite. And I'll talk about 2 companies, one that has a very low-cost satellite terminal to enhance or boost broadband where there is terrestrial networks, and SetCube that has a portable terminal a bit larger than a laptop that you can use anywhere in the world and get 10, 15 megabits in both up and down link. The Forsway solution uses a normal TV dish, which is low cost, and you can find them almost everywhere. Go out in the rural areas in whatever country, rural Africa or India, you will find TV dishes there. They don't cost very much. And Forsway has developed a modem that you connect to a normal TV dish, and you can receive up to 40 megabit. And to keep it low cost, we use the existing terrestrial network, ADSL or 3G, 4G, 2G, to communicate back to the internet. Because it's when you send to satellites, it becomes very expensive. There is a Wi-Fi hotspot into this modem, so you can connect them to your PC or TV or whatever you need. The traffic whether the traffic should go over the terrestrial network or whether it will go over the satellite is decided at the uplink to the satellite by software in the Forsway Extend hub. So this seems to be a very low cost, and it is a very low cost terminal. So when we have rolled out around 50,000 of these modems around the world, why hasn't there been more? And it's because satellite capacity has been very expensive. This is now being changed, and we are really grateful to see that there are some innovative companies like SpaceX and within Elon Musk's company and Starlink that is now driving costs for satellite capacity down. Because this is what has been hindering Forsway, that the old type geostationary satellites, the capacity of them have been very expensive. There are also new high throughput geo satellites coming up, and we can see that in the last 5 years, prices have come down rapidly, and we expect this to continue. And there's also the trend to have broadband to more rural areas, working from home, and so on. So some use cases for the Forsway solution is, for instance, the residential challenge in rural United States. Just before the pandemic started, we were installing our solution in Indian reservations in Arizona, as well as in some small villages. We went to communities where they had ADSL with maybe 1-2 megabits, installed a TV dish, our modem, and more or less immediately they had access to 25 megabit in the downlink. This is a big difference to have 1 megabit. We have worked in India to connect businesses and community service centers in villages, and also suburbs in African cities. And you can see in these locations, there are lots of TV dishes. They are cheap. So this is, as far as we know, the lowest cost way to get broadband into rural areas, and it can be installed within hours. It's not the timelines as for fiber. We're also connecting schools. So this is one example. We're working with a company called Philsat in the Philippines. And here we can see a TV antenna is installed on the roof of the school. They get 41 megabit, and we can see a happy headmaster that has now good broadband to her school. And it's not just for fixed installations. We're also working sponsored by the European Space Agency, to connect cars. Because what's the use of a connected car if it's just connected in the cities? You would like it to be broadband connected when you drive outside the cities as well. And here we have worked with one of the largest satellite operators, SES, with a mechanical, slightly bulky antenna, just to see that the concept works. It drove from Johannesburg to Cape Town and had a good broadband connectivity the whole way, although most of the area it drove through had very low capacity 2G and 3G. In the future, we foresee that this can be evolved into a flat antenna into the roof of every car, just like we have GPS in all cars today. Let me also say a few words about SetCube. That was founded just a few years ago, but has had a really good growth. And this is a terminal you can bring with you and point it towards a satellite, your stationary satellite, within a minute. And then you have 10-15 megabits in both uplink and downlink. And a lot of focus has been gone into making it easy to use. We say that it should be as easy to use as an iPhone. And the turnover last year was doubled from the year before, and we hope to double it this year again. So it's used, for instance, by journalists, by the United Nations, Doctors Without Frontiers, defense organizations, everywhere where you need to have access to broadband. For instance, we can see on this picture, after an earthquake, often the terrestrial network, whether it's wired or cellular, is disrupted, and you need broadband for rescue services, or you need it for news services. And then you can bring this small terminal that fits within hand luggage, or you can bring it in a rucksack, and anyone can use it. You just put it on the ground, you get really good directions from the user interface, and you can point it towards the right satellite within 1 minute. Based on the technologies from Forsway and SetCube, we applied to the Swedish Innovation Agency earlier this year to get a grant to look at the next generation low-cost LEO terminals. I mentioned before that we are really impressed by what Elon Musk is doing with Starlink and getting so many satellites up, but I'm a bit worried that the terminals are a bit too expensive. Of course, they can be used by people that have a lot of money, but if you want really mass deployment, you want much lower cost LEO terminals. So we've started studying how can we take the next step in a low-cost LEO terminal. And this project is led by SetCube, including Chalmers University, Forsway, and another Swedish company that has very low-loss antennas, gap waves. So if there is anyone here in the audience with good connections to either Elon Musk and Starlink or Jeff Bezos and Kuiper, when they run into problems with their terminals, and I know that the Starlink terminals today are heavily subsidized because they are very expensive and they also use a lot of power. But if you want to have a really low-cost terminal that don't use so much power, where you can get it out to mass deployment in Africa, in Asia, and many rural areas in US and Europe, please ask them to get in touch with me. Thank you.